All right, we're back. We have our supplemental budget number 1 and BRE briefing. We're going to start with a presentation from DLS. We have Mr. Romans and Ms. Zimmerman here, I believe. Good to see you both. You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you have on your desk or available to you our document on analysis of supplemental number 1. I'm going to start on page 1. So just as an opening comment, this is generally a technical supplemental, fixing problems in the budget and corrections. It's not, there's not a lot of new exciting things in here. It's just kind of fixing things. So on page 1, it just shows you the impact of the supplemental on the general fund balance. You started with a governor's allowance of $108 million cash balance. With the supplemental, it goes down to just under $101 million. So a net impact of only $7 million on the general fund budget. However, there is a lot of activity within the general fund that's highlighted in page 1. On the revenue adjustments, 2 of note. Fiscal Responsibility Fund, the governor is proposing to transfer about $191 million in the BRFA as introduced. They overstated the amount that's actually available in the fund, so they correct that in the supplemental. So they lose $9 million of general fund revenue there. They have picked up $5 million of revenue because the rainy day fund has more interest than they were thinking, so they're transferring $5 million of rainy day fund balance to the general fund. You would still be at 8% in the rainy day fund, $2.2 billion in the rainy day fund. Some really small revenue transfers. The state aided institution field trip fund, which was started in fiscal 26, they haven't spent any of the 26 money, so they're transferring it to the general fund. There is money in the budget for fiscal 27. And there's a fund in Department of Labor, the non-depository fund, that has a surplus of $1 million. This is from collection agency and other entities regulated by the Commissioner of Financial Regulation pay into this, and there's a little surplus that they're transferring to the general fund. The next section of the chart shows you new spending. There's $173 million of new spending items. $150 million is for behavioral health, about $70 million in fiscal 26 and $80 million in fiscal 27. This is trying to address the concern that DLS raised that we thought the behavioral health budget was quite underfunded. This at least gets it to a closer to an appropriate funding level. In Developmental Disabilities Administration, there was a fiscal 26 deficiency of $15 million using a special fund called the Community Services Trust Fund. That money was spent by the General Assembly last session, so they can't use it twice. So they're correcting that and funding that with general funds instead. And then there was a BRFA item related to using 911 funds for some operating costs. The federal law prohibits that, so they're correcting for that as well with general funds. Under spending reductions, the Medicaid behavioral health issues are funded by taking what appears to be surplus funding in Medicaid in fiscal 26 and 27 and taking it out of Medicaid, putting it into behavioral health. The Climate Catalytic Capital Fund was double budgeted in the budget, so this removes $5 million, so it's only in there once. There's a fund swap and do it as some of the election system projects are supposed to be funded half by local government, so they're recognizing that and reducing the state's share. And the state police are running a high vacancy level in the current year, so there's $4 million of savings assumed from vacancy savings in fiscal 26. So those are really the major items. There's a couple of small reversions from the Commerce Department in fiscal 26. That gets you to the balance. The only other thing I would note on the next page, we show you all of the spending by fund. There's overall a net decrease of $15 million in special fund spending. That's the DDA money that was already spent last session coming out. And in federal funds, there's a little bit of extra federal money for behavioral health. There's a lot of more detail in subsequent pages about all the little ins and outs, but I thought I would give you the overview, and we can stop there if you'd like.
Any questions on supplemental budget number 1? Mostly technical cleanup. Okay. Thank you. Are you doing anything on VRE, or is that just for the comptroller?
I think the comptroller's office will handle that.
Thank you both. Good to see you. Madam Comptroller, welcome. And please feel free to bring up your team, Mr. Shoffley and Mr. Rearman. Yeah, we usually see you more often. We miss you. Yeah.
The women of appropriations up there, you're surrounded.
Is this Mr. Shoffley's last?
This was Mr. Schaffel. Yes, this is Andy's last. Andy has been our Chief Deputy Comptroller. I met him when I was in the General Assembly, and we worked together on a BRE bill when he was the director of the BRE. Yes, at the BRE meeting today, thanked him for all of his work, and I still have his cell phone number, which is not changing. So just really appreciate all that he's done. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. We do have a presentation with a whole bunch of charts that are easier to see than explain, and I'm not sure if it's online. Okay, that's fine. So you all have it. You should have a printout of it. We weren't able to get it over to you in time because it came out an hour ago. But we'll be walking you through that. So good afternoon. I'm Brooke Learman, the Comptroller of Maryland, and with us we have Andy Schaffel, our Chief Deputy Comptroller, and Robert Rehrman, the Director of the Bureau of Revenue Estimates. Today we release the revenue estimates for March 2026 and for FY26 and for FY27, and Robert is going to walk us through his presentation to the board for all of you. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello, Chair Barnes, members of the committee. Good to be here again today and see everybody. And I'm going to just hit the highlights of the forecast and walk through some of the slides. If there's any questions, be happy to answer any questions. On page 3, lists the summary of the changes in the March board revenue estimates. Consistent with our most recent forecasts, when we look at our big 3 revenue sources, that's where we get most of our general fund revenues, and those are most tied to the economy. It's really a recalibration of our expectations of where we're getting the revenue from, and little to no net change in those revenues. Now, in this forecast, we upgraded our forecast for the personal income tax. Our withholding income tax revenues are doing better than anticipated, but we have a cautious outlook on the economy and on the labor market, so we're only recognizing a portion of that overattainment. What's really driving that is we're raising our capital gains forecast for 2025. Now, that increase in the personal income tax is being offset in a modest reduction in the corporate income tax. There's still a lot of uncertainty about the one big beautiful bill and how that's impacting state corporate income tax collections. And then also a write-down in the sales tax forecast. Now, for the sales tax, it's not a write-down of our core sales tax, if you will, that our regular consumer spending is doing strong. Rather, it's a reduction in the IT and data services tax estimate. We are also adjusting 2 other revenues in this forecast. We raised our interest income forecast by a little bit more than $100 million, mostly in fiscal 26. And then we also have received just extraordinarily high estate tax revenues. We are raising our estimate in fiscal 26 by $260 million. We're seeing that as a one-time benefit. We're not carrying it through in the forecast. So if you take out that one-time windfall, if you will, forecast is roughly level. Up about 100 in 26, a little bit more than 100 down in 27, and roughly even. On page 5, just list some of our key revenue sources and how that's informing our forecast. I think I'll just touch on the good news is, we really focus on our withholding and the sales tax as our best economic indicators. And those are growing well despite economic headwinds and despite the federal government cutbacks. However, I think I will caution, there's a little bit of disconnect between our tax data and the economic data. And in our forecast, we don't rely on our withholding to continue to outperform the economic data, if you will. But part of the reason why we're writing up our capital gains is we've just had very strong estimated payments this year, over 20%. And our core sales tax, if you will, taking out cannabis and IT data services, that's growing at double the rate year to date compared to last year. So consumers still are spending. We believe it's partly due to high nominal wage growth, and inflation is still running a little bit higher than it has in the past. I will highlight, just in the corporate income tax, some of the weakness we're seeing in the estimated payments. Relative to December, there's been an overall improvement. There are 4 key sectors that are still down for the year, but they've improved. But I'll highlight our federal contractors. They did not improve. In December, we saw weakness in our non-defense contractors. Since that point in time, we've also had weakness in our defense contractors. So rightfully so, a lot of our focus is on the labor market and these federal government cutbacks, but there is also an impact on the business side as well. And just part of our caution about the economic data on page 9, we just discuss how the U.S. labor market is cooling, relative to where we were last year, or even relative to the December estimates. After the post-pandemic high growth, the U.S. economy was consistently churning out 150,000 jobs each month. That slowed to about 30 to 50,000 during 2025, further slowed at the end of the year, and also the beginning of calendar 2026. I think another cautious note we have on that data is there's been more revisions since the pandemic, but recently it's trended clearly in revising downward prior job reports. And then lastly, we now have geopolitical risk. We don't know what the impact, if any, will be on the U.S. or Maryland economy, but that is a risk going forward to our forecast. And page 11, we have how our labor market did in calendar 25, and it was a challenging year. This is cumulative change. The blue bars are our private sector. The black line is our total number of employed, and the light bar are our federal employees. So we lost about 25,000 federal employees in calendar 25. That's our highest paid industry. And we had anticipated weakness in our private sector, but it was a little weaker than we anticipated, and that ended the year roughly down. But what we're also seeing on pages 12 and 13, we looked at our withholding income tax collections, and those really are outperforming the data. Despite a contraction in the number of people employed in Maryland, we grew at 4% in calendar 25. And that's what we kind of see as our base, or what we think is a good labor market, is 4%. And we hit that despite that contraction in the number of employed. So what that suggests is average wages are still high, but I think it doesn't fully explain the disconnect. So in our forecast, we don't expect that to continue, and we expect withholding growth of just 2% in calendar year 2026. And slide 13 highlights another area of disconnect is that shows our direct federal withholding collections from federal defense agencies and civilian agencies. And again, despite a 15% contraction in employment, our collections were positive for calendar year 2025. They did slow throughout the year, but that's also another reason for our cautious outlook for calendar 26. We don't think we're going to get growth from the federal government since the deferred resignation program ended for most folks in October of last year. And finally, touching on the sales tax, it's really 2 adjustments that we're making. First is we have 2 quarters on the IT and data services tax, and year to date, those collections are about $35 million. So we're revising downward our estimate for fiscal 26 to about 110, and the 27 estimate to about 220 million. About half of that reduction is offset in an increase in our core sales tax growth rate. We had expected that to grow by a little less than 2% in December. We're revising that by 4%. So that's an overview of the forecast and the changes that were made, and happy to take questions.
Thank you, as always, for your work on this. Questions? Delegate Edelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Comptroller, and for continuing to do the 46th District proud. Just, I guess, one note and one question, which is it seems interesting, and I know you pointed this out, but both sales tax and personal income tax seem to be performing in a way that's incongruent with what we're seeing in the labor market.
Yes.
Yes.
But I guess what your sense is that we should not expect that to continue.
Correct. I think that's the approach we take, is we're not going to bank on that continuing to occur.
Okay. And then you mentioned the estate tax. Can you remind us the number you said that the estate tax revenue was above projections?
Sure. We revised upwards our fiscal 26 estimate by $260 million.
Wow.
So I think we're at a record level at this point.
Yeah. Any sense on what contributed to that number?
Large estate tax payments have been high this year.
Okay. Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting takeaways here. I mean, these numbers can be a little head scratching, but when you look at them closer, they hopefully make a little more sense. It does seem like our personal income tax is doing well. And I do appreciate your overall conservative sort of budget forecasting. That helps us in the long run to avoid write-downs.
Yeah.
But it does look like by the numbers, our personal income tax is chugging along pretty well. You said about 4%, and we're only forecasting 2%. That's smart. It's good budgeting for us, but also good news for Marylanders, hopefully moving forward. And also our sales tax, I mean, when you look at it, fiscal 26, which we have more data on because we're sort of into, right? Even without that state tax, it's about what I would normally call modest increase of $95 million, but in these times with the negative impacts of the Trump administration, I would call it significant.
Yeah, no, I think it's really positive. I think that's right, Mr. Chair. And I think, if you look at some of one thing I will note is that, there does continue, if you look at back when we were in December of 2024 with our estimate, when we did do some write-downs because we anticipated what was coming, one of the things that I'm sort of most proud of the Bureau of Revenue estimates, and many of them are behind us, is that we have been consistent over the past year and year plus now with our revenue estimates. There haven't been, even though we've been in a period of the most volatility and the most uncertainty, in the past, 20 years, maybe since the Great Recession, we have had very, very steady and what's the word I'm looking for? Consistent estimates that have been accurate, right? We've had accurate estimates, and that is really important for all of you and for the governor, and it allows, I think, Marylanders to understand that when we're creating the budget, then it's based on a strong foundation. So I think that's been admirable.
Thank you, Comptroller, and to the BRE team behind you. Thank you so much for your work. Any other questions? Okay, well, great to see you as
Thanks.
always. Great to
Thank
see
you,
all of you.
everybody. Take care.
Good day. We will, I think, now move back to, we're going to just briefly adjourn, and we're going to go back into bill hearings. When we get back into bill hearings, we're going to start with Delegate Harrison, since you're here. And so if you and your panel want to get ready up there, but we're just going to adjourn briefly while we switch the system back over.